All right, so get the, those large language models, those LLMs like ChatGPT and Copilot.
Yeah.
Well, someone sent over this fascinating research on how they're impacting students learning to code.
Interesting.
Yeah. We're talking real-world insights from an experiment with undergrads learning React, that JavaScript library, for building user interfaces.
Oh, for sure.
So this research from the University of Maribor, it's got me thinking.
Yeah.
How does having AI that can practically write code for you actually affect, really learning this stuff?
It's a really good question. And what's fascinating about this particular study is they designed this 10-week experiment to really mimic, what it's like to be a developer out there in the real world.
Right.
So for the first 9 weeks, students, they could use any LLM they wanted, just like, on the job.
Total freedom.
But then for that final assignment, no more AI. Cut off cold turkey.
Whoa, that's got to be tough. Like relying on your GPS for months and then suddenly you're navigating by the stars.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the only way to really see how much stuck, right? If they actually absorb the material.
Exactly. Yeah. And the researchers, they were smart about it. They tracked how students were using these LLMs for all sorts of tasks, actually generating code, getting explanations, debugging. So we can start to see which areas were most affected.
So spill the beans. What did they find? How did all that LLM use actually impact how the students did?
Well, buckle up. Because the results, they're kind of thought-provoking. What they found was that overall, more LLM use actually correlated with lower grades on that final assignment.
Hold on. So the more students leaned on the AI, the worse they did when they were on their own. That's almost the opposite of what you'd expect, right?
Yeah, it's pretty counterintuitive, and it's really important to remember correlation, it doesn't automatically equal causation.
Right.
It's not that the LLMs were, making students worse at coding, but it definitely makes you wonder, how might these tools be changing how people learn?
Okay, so let's dig into that correlation a bit. Were there any specific things, any specific ways the students were using the LLMs that seemed to, really have a negative impact?
Yeah, definitely. The strongest correlations I found were around code generation and debugging. So the more students were relying on LLMs to actually write code or, to fix errors, the more they struggled when they had to do it themselves.
So kind of like if you use a calculator for every math problem, you might get the right answer, but you aren't really building those mental muscles.
It is a lot like that. But coding, it's just so much more nuanced, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about getting the right answer. It's about understanding the logic behind it. The structure, the design choices that make code, elegant, efficient. And debugging, that's not just a coding skill. It's a life skill. Think about it. Troubleshooting anything your car breaks down, a recipe goes wrong. Even a relationship hits a snag. It all requires that ability to kind of systematically think through the problem, find the root cause, and come up with a solution.
That's a good point. So are they saying that LLMs might actually be holding back the development of those super important problem-solving skills?
Well, it's not quite that simple. LLMs, they're powerful tools, right? But like any tool, they got to be used thoughtfully. And remember, the study also found that using LLMs, for understanding concepts, looking things up, getting explanations of how things work, that wasn't actually tied to lower grades.
So more like having a superpowered textbook at your fingertips.
Yeah, exactly. Like an on-demand tutor that can just break things down for you. And that's what's so tricky for educators, right? How do you bring these tools in, use them to make things better, but without the students becoming totally dependent on them?
Right. You don't want to forget how to read a map just because you have GPS.
Yeah. Exactly. Finding that balance. Now, this research, it specifically looked at those publicly available LLMs, the ones anyone can use, like ChatGPT.
Right.
So I'm curious, do you think these findings, would they apply to more specialized LLMs, the kind that you need specific hardware or expertise for?
That's a good question. But I think this focus on the public LLMs, that's actually what makes this research so important.
Why is that?
Well, because it means almost anyone can use them. So think about the impact that could have on education. Plus, a lot of the research that's already been done on LLMs in education, well, it was before these really powerful models were available to everyone. So we're in new territory.
Yeah, we are. It's a whole new landscape, and things are changing so fast.
Right. And this study, it's like a snapshot, a glimpse into what's happening right now. And remember, this wasn't just, theoretical stuff. These students, they were building real applications with React over 9 weeks.
Oh, yeah. The researchers made sure the assignments were like the real deal, challenges they'd face in an actual development environment. And they even had experienced TAs to guide the students, just like in a classroom.
So even with all that support, we're still seeing that overall connection, more LLM use, lower final grades. That's got to make people think,
It really does. And it just shows how important it is for educators to really put some thought into how they bring these LLMs into the classroom.
So what's the answer? How do we strike that balance? How do we use these tools to help students, make them stronger, but not let them become crutches?
Well, I think the first step is changing our mindset. Instead of thinking of LLMs as just, this shortcut to the right answer, we got to teach students to see them more as like thought partners.
Thought partners.
Yeah. Encourage them to use the LLMs to try different things, to get unstuck, to really understand tough concepts. But the end goal is still to build those core skills, the problem solving. That's what makes a programmer.
So using LLMs to help, but not replace those skills.
Exactly. And even the paper itself, the researchers, they admit more research is needed, especially on the long-term effects of using these LLMs. Cause this field, it is moving so fast. What's cutting edge today?
Right. It might be ancient history tomorrow.
Pretty much.
Which just makes all this we're talking about even more important. It's like we're all figuring this out together, right? In real time. So let's zoom out for a sec. Think big picture. What does all this mean for the future of programming education? Because we've got these crazy powerful AI tools, but we're still kind of figuring out where they fit,
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, imagine a world where LLMs don't just help you write code, but they actually help you learn how to do it. Think about the possibilities.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to. But paint me a picture. What would that even look like?
Well, imagine an LLM that can take these, this complex programming ideas and just break them down, make them simple, make them tailored to you, how you learn best. Or what about one that gives you feedback on your code? Not just oh, you made a mistake, but really helps you improve your logic, make things more efficient.
It'd be like having a personal coding coach available anytime.
Exactly. But even beyond that, think about accessibility. LLMs could help get rid of those language barriers, open up coding to a much wider audience, global, or even create more inclusive learning environments for students with disabilities. The potential here is just huge.
It really is. It's kind of mind-blowing, but got to be realistic too, right? There's got to be some downsides.
Oh, for sure. I mean, anytime you bring in a powerful new technology, there are going to be challenges, risks, like bias in the algorithms, for instance. We got to make sure these LLMs are being used fairly.
Right. And what about jobs? I mean, if LLMs can already write code, does that mean human programmers are going to be out of work?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a valid concern, but I think it's more complicated than just, machines replacing humans. Think about the printing press. It didn't get rid of writers.
Good point.
It just changed how they worked. I think LLMs will be similar. They'll change how we code, not necessarily eliminate coding jobs altogether.
So more like humans and machines working together.
Exactly. And the key is going to be, programmers will need to adapt, develop those skills that work with the LLMs, not against them. Things like, critical thinking, creativity, that ability to solve complex problems. Those are going to be more important than ever.
So it's almost like LLMs are pushing us to become even better programmers.
I think so. It's about focusing on the higher level stuff, the human element of coding. And for everyone listening out there, whether you're a, seasoned coder just starting out or just curious about all this, this is something we all need to be thinking about.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm always curious, what's your biggest takeaway from all this?
That's a tough one. But for me, it comes down to this. LLMs, they're tools. Powerful ones, but still just tools. And like any tool, they can be used for good or for bad. It's on us, educators, students, society as a whole, to figure out how to use them the right way, to make sure they're helping us build a better future, a more equitable one, a more innovative one.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And for all you listeners out there, keep those brains buzzing, keep exploring all this stuff, and keep those questions coming. Until next time, stay curious.